Welcome back, and thank you for tuning in to HK Cheating Stories. We appreciate each and every one of you joining us. Where in the world are you watching from? Let us know in the comments. Now, let's get the story started. My name is Nathan Brooks. I co-founded one of the most powerful tech empires in the country, but you won't find my name on any of the plaques, websites, or press releases. My wife made sure of that. She told me I wasn't family anymore, right before taking off on a private jet with my company, my legacy, and my future. But what she didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had built a secret into the system, a quiet failsafe. And the moment she erased me, I flipped the switch. This is the story of how I took everything back. I always thought betrayal would come like a thief in the night, sudden, brutal, silent. But the truth is, sometimes betrayal arrives in broad daylight, wearing lipstick and heels, standing at the top of a private jet staircase with her arms folded like she's doing you a favor. That was the day my wife, Rachel, looked me dead in the eye and told me I wasn't family anymore. The engines of the jet thundered behind her, that familiar metallic roar pulsing through the air like a war drum. The scent of burning jet fuel hung heavy in the late afternoon heat, and the sun cast long, slicing shadows across the tarmac. But none of it mattered. All I could see was her. Rachel, the woman I had loved, the woman I had built an empire with, the woman I had once believed would be standing beside me for the rest of my life. Instead, she stood above me, glaring down with an expression so cold it could have frozen steel. Her words cut through the roar of the engines like a scalpel. Only board members and family are allowed. I didn't understand at first. I blinked, tilted my head, waiting for the punchline. That's a joke, right? She didn't flinch, didn't blink. She just raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow and gave me that impatient tilt of her head she used when she was ready to move on from a conversation. You're not on the list, Nathan. This is a strategic retreat. The board approved the guest list. It's not personal. Not personal. I laughed, quietly. Not from amusement, but disbelief. The kind of dry, hollow laugh that escapes when your heart's just been ripped from your chest and you're too stunned to scream. Not personal, I said, taking a step back. I built this company with you. I built the damn product this trip is celebrating. You're flying off with a team I trained to pitch a system I wrote line by line. And I'm not even invited? Rachel didn't answer. Instead, her assistant stepped forward, all polished smiles and clipped tones, like I was a delivery driver who had wandered too close to the runway. And behind him, I saw two security guards moving in sync, like they'd rehearsed this exact moment. That was when it hit me. This wasn't a miscommunication. This wasn't some oversight. This had been planned. They knew I wasn't supposed to be here. She knew, and she didn't care. I turned my eyes toward the jet. Inside, I could see silhouettes, laughing, sipping champagne. Board members I had once briefed personally. Engineers I had mentored. Executives who used to hang on my every word. None of them looked out at me. None of them acknowledged me. I had become invisible. I felt a chill sweep through me despite the heat. My reflection in the terminal glass showed a man I barely recognized. Unshaven, eyes hollow, shoulders slumped, but not from defeat, from the unbearable weight of clarity. She had written me out. No press statements, no company memo, no dramatic firing, just a slow erasure, one meeting at a time, one conversation at a time, until all that was left was the illusion of partnership. And now, with a single line, only family is allowed, Rachel had slammed the final nail into the coffin. I clenched my jaw, willing myself not to speak, not to rage, not to give her the satisfaction of seeing me break. I took another step back, then another. The jet doors sealed shut. The engines roared louder. I watched the aircraft lift off, watched the silhouette of my wife through the window, sipping from a crystal flute and laughing with people who now saw me as nothing more than a footnote. And still, she didn't look back. As the jet disappeared into the horizon, something inside me snapped, not with anger, but with resolve. She thought she had erased me. She thought she had won. But Rachel didn't know the one thing that mattered most. I had a secret she'd long forgotten. While she was busy stealing the spotlight, I had been building something far more powerful than a brand or a board vote. I had the keys, the code, the backdoor. She thought she had the empire, but I still held the fuse. And now? Now I was going to burn it all to the ground. It's easy to forget where something started when you're too busy watching it burn. But that night, as I drove away from the airstrip with the roar of jet engines still echoing in my ears, I couldn't stop thinking about how it all began, how she began. Rachel wasn't always the woman who stood at the top of a staircase like a queen casting out her loyal knight. No, back then she was hungry, sharp, clever, and desperate to save a tech startup that was circling the drain. She had charm, no doubt. She knew how to work a room, how to make investors lean in with nothing more than a confident smile and a well-rehearsed pitch. But beneath all that polish, there was fear in her eyes, fear that it was all going to collapse. And it would have, if she hadn't found me. I was no businessman. Hell, at the time I was barely scraping by. Just another overworked software engineer in a cramped apartment with peeling wallpaper and a half-dead potted plant on the windowsill. But what I did have, what no one else in the industry could touch, was an idea. A piece of code that could change everything. I called it Corpulse, an AI-powered automation engine that adapted in real time. It wasn't just smart. It was alive, learning and evolving with every decision it made. It could overhaul logistics systems, manage financial transactions, and optimize global networks without a single human touch. I knew it could revolutionize the tech world. But I didn't have a stage. I scraped together the last of my savings to buy a ticket to a tech summit I had no business attending. I had no booth, no budget, and no backup plan. Just a laptop, a coffee-stained hoodie, and a dream I had bled into every line of code. That's where she saw me. I was in the corner of the demo hall, showing a handful of bored attendees how Corpulse could reconfigure supply chains in milliseconds. Most of them drifted away, unimpressed, until I noticed a pair of sharp eyes watching from across the room. Rachel. She was there as a keynote speaker, all high heels and high praise, talking about innovation while her company was barely breathing. But when she approached me, her smile wasn't polite. It was calculating, like she had just spotted a golden ticket. You made this. There was something in her tone, clipped, curious, hungry. I nodded. Yeah, it's still rough, but it works. She studied the interface, her eyes scanning the cascading data on the screen. Then she looked at me, not the way investors usually looked at engineers. No condescension, no boredom, just focus. We need to talk. We did talk. For hours. About the software, the architecture, the future of automation. But she didn't just ask about the code. She asked about me. What I wanted. What I feared. What drove me. I told her the truth. I don't care about the spotlight. I just want this to exist. I want to change something. Her smile widened like a cat that just cornered a mouse. You have the brains. I have the infrastructure. Together, we'd be unstoppable. That was the pitch that changed my life. It sounded like a partnership. It felt like destiny. And God help me, I believed it. She told me about her startup, underfunded, overstretched, gasping for air. But with Corpulse integrated into their framework, she said, they'd regain investor confidence. They could pivot, scale, dominate. Looking back, maybe that moment should have been my first warning. Maybe I should have seen the glint of ambition in her eyes and realized she wasn't offering me a partnership. She was spotting an acquisition. But I didn't see it then. All I saw was someone who believed in me. For the first time in my life, someone saw the value in what I had created. Not just the code, but the vision behind it. I said yes. What followed was a blur. Late nights, cold coffee, glowing screens. I refined Corpulse, sharpened it, molded it into a system more advanced than anything on the market. Meanwhile, Rachel played her part perfectly, wooing investors, making deals, drawing media attention. We were two halves of a machine. And somewhere in all that chaos, something else happened. We fell in love. Or at least I did. Those strategy meetings turned into midnight takeout on the office floor. Those post-launch celebrations turned into private moments, whispers of a future together. And when she asked me to marry her, yes, she asked, I didn't hesitate. It felt like the natural next step. We were building a company, a life, a legacy. Corpulse wasn't just a product. It was our child. And I believed, with every beat of my naive heart, that we'd raise it together. But that's the thing about fairy tales. They always end too soon. What I didn't realize then, what I couldn't bring myself to see, was that Rachel wasn't marrying me for love. She was securing full control of the kingdom. And I had just given her the keys. It started with the little things. The first time I noticed something was off, Rachel was giving a press interview. We had just landed a major partnership with one of the top logistics firms in the country, something that wouldn't have been possible without Corpulse running flawlessly under pressure. I expected her to mention me, even just in passing. She didn't. She talked about her team, her vision, her innovation. Not a single word about the architect who had built the engine running it all. I watched the segment twice, thinking maybe I had missed it. Maybe she had said something. Maybe I was being paranoid. But no, I wasn't even a footnote. I told myself it didn't matter. I wasn't in it for the fame. I never cared about the cameras or the press junkets or the industry accolades. That was Rachel's world. I was the guy in the server room, the one who thrived behind the screen. We had agreed on that from the beginning. Still, something about the way she brushed past my name felt deliberate. Then came the meetings. At first, we always presented together. Rachel would lead with the pitch, and I'd come in with the tech. We made a great team, her charisma, my clarity. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, I started getting excluded. Investors wanted faster meetings, she said. Less technical talk. She'd handle it, she assured me. I trusted her. So I kept working, perfecting Corpulse, expanding its neural adaptability, building in new modules that were years ahead of our competitors. I was proud of it, proud of us. Until the board meeting. I walked into the conference room and found a glossy new brochure sitting at every chair. Corpulse, a vision by Rachel Whitmore. I stared at the cover. My name wasn't there. Not once. Not even as a co-founder. I looked around the table. No one seemed surprised. Not the CFO I'd helped recruit. Not the CTO I'd personally mentored when he was just a junior developer. No one said a word. It was like they'd already accepted the new narrative. I waited until the meeting ended, then pulled Rachel aside. We built this together, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Why do I feel like I'm disappearing from the picture? She sighed like I was a child making a fuss over spilled milk. Nathan, you're overthinking it. Investors connect with a single voice. It's just cleaner messaging. You're still part of this. Don't be dramatic. Dramatic. That word hit harder than she probably intended. Because I wasn't being dramatic. I was being erased. But I let it go again. I told myself she was right. That maybe I was just too sensitive, too caught up in the details. Then came the documents. Rachel called it a strategic consolidation. The board, she claimed, wanted to streamline ownership. Too many names cause legal clutter, she said. We need flexibility to make bold decisions. Having everything under one name just simplifies things. I frowned. And that one name just happens to be yours. She laughed, curled up on our penthouse couch with a glass of wine in her hand. Come on, Nathan. It's not like that. What's mine is yours. We're married, remember? I hesitated. I stared at the paperwork for a long time. I remember the way the pen felt in my hand. Heavy, like it knew what I was about to do was a mistake. But I signed. Because I believed her. Because I loved her. Because I was a fool. After that, the pace picked up. Fast. My project lead stopped reporting to me. When I asked why, they said Rachel had reassigned teams for efficiency. Entire modules I had spent months developing were handed off to people I hadn't even met. My access to critical systems was temporarily restricted for maintenance. My calendar slowly emptied. My office door stopped receiving knocks. The worst part? She didn't even try to hide it anymore. I'd come home to find her celebrating a new deal with board members I hadn't seen in weeks. She'd host exclusive retreats I wasn't invited to, then act like it had slipped her mind. I'd sit across from her at dinner, watching her scroll through emails, barely acknowledging me, and wonder how the hell we had ended up here. Then one evening, I walked into our apartment and saw the itinerary sitting on her desk. A private jet, a multi-day corporate retreat with the board, an expansion rollout I had spent 2 years preparing for, and my name wasn't on the list. That was the moment the fog lifted. All this time, I had convinced myself we were still a team, that this was just a phase, a misunderstanding, that love, loyalty, and shared history meant something. But Rachel had already made her decision. She wasn't just cutting me out. She was replacing me. And the worst part? She had done it so slowly, so methodically, that I hadn't even noticed the knife until it was buried in my back. But I felt it now. Every inch. I should have seen it coming. I really should have. But love has a way of blinding you. It turns red flags into excuses, betrayal into miscommunication, and full-on manipulation into she's just under a lot of pressure. That night, When I found the retreat itinerary on Rachel's desk, something inside me cracked. Not a loud, explosive break, but a silent fracture. The kind that takes a while to notice until everything starts collapsing around it. The retreat was for Corporal's board, our board. A 3-day luxury strategy session in Napa Valley, complete with vineyard tours, fireside planning meetings, and keynote speeches from the company's visionary leader. And that leader wasn't me. I wasn't even mentioned. I stared at the printed schedule, reading over each line, each session, each name. Rachel, of course, was headlining. So were the department heads she had reshuffled to report directly to her. I even saw some junior execs who had been with us for less than a year. But me? Nothing. Not even a courtesy invite. I waited for her to come out of the bathroom. She was humming, as she walked out, hair wrapped in a towel, scrolling through her phone like the world was exactly as it should be. You weren't going to tell me about the retreat? She barely glanced up. What retreat? I held up the paper. She blinked, then gave a shrug that stabbed deeper than any blade. Oh, that. It's just PR stuff. You hate that kind of thing, remember? Media photos, investor charm sessions. Thought you'd be relieved. I just stood there. Relieved? I had built the system they were celebrating. I had architected the expansion plan she was about to present. And now I was being tossed aside like I'd never been part of any of it. Rachel, I said quietly, I co-founded this company. With you. And yet I'm not even being included in the biggest milestone since our Series A round. She sighed. The way she looked at me in that moment, it wasn't anger or guilt or even annoyance. It was dismissal, like I was something in the way. Nathan, don't make this bigger than it is. The board wants a streamlined leadership structure going forward. That means one voice, one face. It's not personal. Not personal. There it was again. The same phrase she used when she left me on that tarmac. The same phrase that tried to turn betrayal into a business strategy. I didn't say anything for a long time. I just stood there, staring at a woman I no longer recognized. This wasn't the scrappy startup fighter I fell in love with. This wasn't the partner who used to stay up until 3 a.m. debugging code with me over greasy pizza and cold coffee. This was someone else. Someone who had tasted power and decided it was better alone. I gave up everything for this. I said finally, my voice low. She met my eyes, cold, steady, unblinking. And it's appreciated. But things evolve. That was it. No apology. No regret. Just another bullet point in a pitch deck. I clenched my fists. My pulse pounded in my ears. I wanted to scream. To tear the damn retreat flyer in half. To demand answers. To make her feel what she had done to me. But I didn't. Because in that moment, something else hit me. Something colder, sharper, and more powerful than rage. Clarity. She had already written me out. The story of Corpulse was being rewritten in real time, and I was being edited out of every chapter. If I stayed, if I argued, if I begged to be included, I'd be playing right into her hands. I'd be the desperate man trying to claw back relevance. I'd become the cautionary tale she'd tell the next wave of execs behind closed doors. No, if Rachel wanted war, she was going to get it. But not the kind she expected. Because while she was out there playing corporate chess, I'd been quietly building my own plan. My own failsafe. My ace in the hole. She thought she had won. She thought locking me out of meetings, cutting my access, and taking my name off the website meant she had erased me. What she didn't know was that Corpulse, my creation, still pulsed to the rhythm of my code. And embedded deep inside it, like a heartbeat she never noticed, was a backdoor. A kill switch. Just in case something ever went wrong. Just in case the person I trusted most turned into the very threat I never saw coming. That night, I didn't sleep. I didn't pack a bag. I didn't send angry emails. I didn't call the board. I sat in my old office, what used to be my sanctuary before it became a glass box they pretended I still mattered in, and I stared at my laptop. I watched the cursor blink on my private development server, the one no one knew existed, the one not connected to company networks, the one that still belonged to me. Rachel had taken the spotlight. She had the board, the jet, the empire. But I had the trigger. The cursor blinked in the dark, steady and patient, like it had been waiting for this moment all along. While Rachel was sipping champagne at 35,000 feet, surrounded by executives who once called me their mentor, I was staring into the soul of Corpulse, the lines of code I had written with blistered fingers and sleepless nights. Every algorithm, every system behavior, Every adaptive loop had my signature. She could dress it up with flashy branding and polished presentations, but under the hood, it was still mine. And I had built in a backdoor, a private failsafe, buried so deep within the framework that not even our top engineers knew it existed. I had written it in the earliest days, back when I still trusted her, back when I believed in us. It wasn't meant for sabotage. Back then, it was just a safety net, a way to protect Corpulse if something went catastrophically wrong, if hackers breached our defenses, or if the system started behaving unpredictably. I never imagined I'd need to use it against the very woman I built it with. But here we were. Rachel thought she had locked me out, thought I was powerless, thought I'd slink away quietly and let her rewrite history. She forgot one thing. I don't go down quietly. I typed the first command. The screen flickered, and diagnostic lines began to scroll. Server clusters pinged back with data, uptime logs, user counts, access credentials. Every part of Corpulse's vast infrastructure responded to me. I had never felt more connected to the thing I created, or more certain of what needed to happen next. I triggered a silent protocol. Nothing destructive. Not yet. Just enough to start pulling the threads. First, I revoked every executive-level access key. Just like that, Rachel and her inner circle were locked out of the command systems. They could still see the front-end dashboards, still pretend like everything was functioning normally, but they no longer had control. No new updates. No security changes. No override privileges. Only me. The irony was poetic. While she was flying high on her own delusions of power, the real engine of her empire was already slipping from her grasp. I didn't stop there. I mirrored the core AI logic to my private server, essentially duplicating the intelligence behind Corpulse in a new, independent environment. The board would call it theft. But how could you steal something you built? By the time Rachel landed, the cracks were already forming. My phone buzzed at exactly 6:07 a.m. I didn't answer. It rang again, and again. On the fifth call, I finally picked up. I didn't speak first. Her voice came through sharp, panicked, and cracking at the edges. Nathan, what the hell is happening? Corpulse is locked down. None of us can get in. Not the board, not the engineers. No one. What did you do? I sipped my coffee slowly. Let the silence stretch. Then I said it. Calm. Cold. Deliberate. Sorry, Rachel. Only family is allowed. For a moment, she didn't respond. I could hear her breathing on the other end. Fast, shallow, spiraling. I imagined her standing in some luxury suite, the illusion finally cracking. She started. I cut her off. Let's get one thing straight. You didn't build Corpulse. I did. You didn't architect this system. I did. You don't own it. Not really. You think you can take it back? She hissed. I smiled. No. I already did. Then I hung up. I didn't feel triumphant. Not yet. This wasn't about revenge, not entirely. This was about truth. About reclaiming what was mine. About reminding the world, and Rachel, that empires built on stolen legacies never last. Within the hour, more calls came in. Board members, investors, even legal. I ignored most of them. They didn't care about me when Rachel was riding high. They cheered while she pushed me out. Now they were watching the foundation crack, and suddenly I was valuable again? No. Too late. By noon, the system had fully pivoted. All authentication required biometric input, my biometric input. The security layer rebuilt itself in real time, undoing every access channel she had created. And Rachel? She was scrambling. I imagined her, calling emergency meetings, hiring cybersecurity specialists, threatening staff, searching for answers that no longer existed in her world. Because the truth was, I was done playing defense. She had taken everything from me, my name, my place, my creation. But she forgot the most important rule of all. You never push a builder out of his own house when he still has the blueprint. By the time the sun rose over the city skyline, Rachel's world was already beginning to fall apart, and I hadn't even touched the surface yet. I sat alone in my apartment, sipping coffee while the early morning light spilled across my desk, illuminating the glowing lines of code on my screen. Corpulse was now under my complete control. Every access point, every executive credential, every master key that Rachel and her precious board once held had been revoked. They were out. And the best part? They had no idea how or why. The system was still running. To the outside world, Corpulse was operating normally, for now. Clients were logging in. Data was flowing. But behind the curtain, all critical functions had been locked behind biometric encryption keyed solely to me. The moment they tried to issue a system-wide command or alter the architecture, they'd be met with a wall of silence. I watched the first few notifications roll in. Unauthorized access attempts, credential mismatches, elevated security warnings. She was trying. She was failing. At 6:07 a.m., my phone rang again. Rachel. I let it buzz until it stopped, only to have it light up again a moment later. And again. On the fifth call, I answered, just to hear the panic in her voice. Nathan, this isn't funny. Corpulse is rejecting all high-level logins. We can't access anything. We're locked out of our own system. I let out a soft breath, almost smiling. Good morning to you too, Rachel. Something wrong. Don't play games with me, she snapped. I know this is you. What did you do? I leaned back in my chair, staring at the source code pulsing across my screen like a living, breathing organism. Just taking back what's mine. She went silent. That silence was louder than any scream she could have thrown my way. For the first time, I could hear the fear in her voice. Not the performative kind she used in board meetings to manipulate concern. This was real. Raw. We built this together, she finally said, her voice thinner now. You can't just hijack it like this. I chuckled. Funny. That's exactly what you did. And then, as coldly as she had once told me I wasn't family, I gave her the same words back. Only family is allowed. I hung up. It wasn't about vengeance. Not yet. This was a message. A warning. A shot across the bow. They thought they had pushed me into the shadows. That I'd quietly disappear while Rachel basked in the spotlight. But now the shadows were moving, and they were swallowing the light. By 8:15 a.m., I received a text from one of the few engineers who had remained loyal to me. Someone Rachel had nearly fired during her restructuring purge. They're panicking. Total chaos. Board is losing their minds. You really did it. What's next? I didn't reply. Let them sweat. Let her sweat. Rachel had spent years crafting her image. Untouchable, brilliant, always 10 steps ahead. But her one blind spot had always been the same, me. She never understood how deeply I had woven myself into Corpulse. Not just the code, but the architecture, the logic trees, the embedded functions that could mimic normal behavior while rerouting control elsewhere. And now? Now that control was mine. At 10 a.m., the board called. Not Rachel. Not one of her minions. The board. I let it ring twice before answering. Nathan. The voice on the other end said, low and measured. We seem to be experiencing a technical disruption. Is that what we're calling it? I said, leaning back in my chair. You know what I mean, he snapped. We need access restored immediately. Every second this continues, we're bleeding millions. Do you have any idea? Yes, I cut in. I do. I know exactly what this costs. I watched you all sit there and let her erase me from the company I built. You didn't speak up. You didn't care. And now? Now you need my help. A heavy pause. Then the question I'd been waiting for. What do you want? I smiled. Nothing. Not yet. Click. I ended the call. Because this wasn't about negotiating. This wasn't about deals or power grabs. This was about control. About taking back what was stolen from me. About reminding every single one of them that I was the one who created Corpulse. I was the genius behind the curtain. And now, the curtain had dropped. By noon, Rachel showed up. Not on the phone. Not through legal. In person. She stood at my front door like she still had authority over me. Hair perfect, suit tailored. But there was something different in her eyes. Panic. The kind of panic that only comes when someone realizes their illusion of control has shattered. I opened the door slowly, arms crossed. To what do I owe the honor? She stepped inside without waiting for an invitation. We need to fix this, she said, her voice tight. Whatever you did, it's gone too far. Too far. I echoed. You took my name off everything. You told me I wasn't family. And now you want to talk about too far? She flinched. For the first time since all this began, Rachel, cold, calculating Rachel, didn't have a comeback. And in that moment, I saw it. She wasn't angry anymore. She was afraid. Rachel stood in my living room like a general who'd just realized she'd lost the war. Her hair was immaculate, her suit crisp, her makeup flawless, but none of it could hide the truth in her eyes. She was unraveling. The steel resolve she once wore like armor had cracked, and underneath it was panic. Real, unfiltered, and completely unfamiliar on her. I didn't offer her a seat. I just leaned against the kitchen counter, arms crossed, letting the silence linger long enough to become uncomfortable. Whatever this is, she said, trying to steady her voice. It's not just about you and me anymore. Core pulse is collapsing. Clients are pulling out. Systems are glitching. You've made your point. Now undo it. I tilted my head, studying her like she was some stranger I'd never met. Undo it. I repeated, slowly. You want me to clean up your mess? After everything. Nathan, she snapped, this isn't just about pride. We built this together. I cut her off with a short, bitter laugh. You built your empire on my name, my work, my silence. And when I became inconvenient, you erased me like a typo. She stepped forward, her voice rising. I did what I had to do for the company. No, I said, my voice colder than the room. You did what you had to do for you. Her lips parted as if she had a retort, but nothing came. The silence that followed was the most honest thing we'd shared in months. You're enjoying this, she whispered. I didn't deny it. Because she was right. Watching her empire crumble while she stood helpless, it wasn't just justice. It was balance. She had stolen everything from me, thinking I'd fade into obscurity. But I hadn't faded. I'd been waiting. By the time Rachel left, slamming the door with far less force than she probably wanted, the storm had already started to spread. That evening, the fallout exploded. News outlets picked up on the chaos inside Core Pulse. Investors were leaking details to the media, trying to save face. Internal sabotage, the headlines whispered. Leadership crisis. The tech queen dethroned. The stock dropped 30% overnight. And I watched it unfold from my couch, coffee in hand, as calmly as if I were watching the weather. By morning, it was a full-scale collapse. Core Pulse clients, banks, logistics companies, data analysts were hemorrhaging money. Automated systems that relied on real-time AI feedback started glitching. Shipping lanes failed. Financial predictions went dark. Critical updates couldn't be deployed. The chaos cost millions, then billions. And all of it led to one inevitable question being asked across every boardroom, every trading floor, every tech blog. Where is Nathan Brooks? Suddenly, the man Rachel had spent years pushing into the shadows became the center of the story. They dug up old interviews, archived articles, leaked emails. Former employees came forward. Engineers I had trained shared screenshots of code commits, documents, timestamps. The truth started seeping out like oil on water. Core Pulse was my creation, not hers, and the world had been lied to. By noon, my phone rang again. Not Rachel. The board. I let it ring 6 times before I picked up. Nathan, one of them said, voice tight, we need to talk. About what? I asked flatly. About resolving this. You've made your point. Let's find a way forward. I didn't say anything. We're prepared to offer you reinstatement. Co-founder title. Full public acknowledgement. Compensation. I leaned back in my chair and smiled. Core Pulse doesn't exist anymore, I said. Not the way you think it does. A long pause. What does that mean? It means, I said slowly, that while you were clapping for Rachel and counting your stock options, I was rebuilding it. Not for you. Not for her. For me. You're bluffing. Am I? Click. I ended the call. And in that moment, I knew they finally understood. This wasn't about negotiation. This wasn't about winning me back. It was about witnessing what happens when you push a creator too far. That evening, I initiated the final sequence. Core Pulse intellectual property, its patents, its core architecture, its learning engine, was migrated, transferred, erased from their servers, secured in mine. The company still had a name, but it had no soul. Rachel's final card came at 7 p.m. A text. Meet me. One last time. Hotel Langford. 8 p.m. For a brief second, I debated ignoring it. But no. I wanted to see the look in her eyes when she realized it was over. Really, finally over. And when I walked into that hotel bar, saw her sitting there alone with a full glass of untouched wine, I knew I was right. She looked up at me like a woman trying to summon ghosts. You came, she murmured. I sat across from her, silent. She looked different. Not broken. Just empty. And when she finally spoke, when she whispered, I never stopped loving you. I didn't flinch. I didn't soften. Because that part of me, the man who once believed in her, was already gone. I stopped loving you, I said, the moment you told me I wasn't family. And I walked away. The night I left that hotel bar, I didn't look back. Not when Rachel said my name. Not when her voice cracked. Not when the silence between us became a living thing. Because I knew, if I looked back, even for a second, she'd see something human in me. Something she could try to claw onto one last time. But that man, the one who once would have forgiven her, was already dead. The next morning, her silence confirmed what I already knew. She didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't send lawyers, board members, or even one of her polished, fake-smiling assistants. Because now there was nothing left to say. Rachel Whitmore, the queen of corpals, the woman who once commanded boardrooms with a single glance, was gone. And all that remained was the fallout. The media had a field day. From tech icon to cautionary tale, Rachel Whitmore's stunning downfall. Was corpals built on lies? The real genius behind the AI revolution steps out of the shadows. They dragged her through every headline. Reporters dissected old press releases, comparing timelines, highlighting how my name had been systematically erased. Former employees, ones she thought had stayed loyal, came forward, some anonymously, others boldly. They spoke the truth. And the truth was simple. She was never the creator. She was the thief. Investors pulled out. Clients terminated contracts. Corpal's stock hit rock bottom. The company was bleeding from every angle. And Rachel, once the face of it all, was persona non grata. Then came the final blow. The board removed her. Quietly, cleanly, and with enough corporate doublespeak to soften the press release. But the message was crystal clear. Rachel Whitmore was no longer CEO. No longer anything. She had built an empire on my work, and now, she didn't even own the ashes. I heard from a mutual contact that she was trying to sell off her remaining shares, desperate to salvage whatever cash she could before the bottom caved in. But by then, Corpal stock was worth less than a cup of coffee. No one was buying. Meanwhile, I was just getting started. 2 weeks later, I made my move. SyncForge. A new name. A new platform. But the same revolutionary AI engine. Rebuilt, reborn, and now mine. No Rachel. No board. No lies. And the best part? I didn't do it alone. One by one, the developers she discarded came back. The engineers she belittled. The visionaries she shut down to keep the spotlight for herself. Not for money. Not for glory. They came back for revenge. And when we launched, it was a tidal wave. Investors who had once sung Rachel's praises were knocking on my door. Tech blogs that crowned her the face of innovation were now writing about me. And the narrative, the one she worked so hard to control, slipped completely from her grasp. She watched it all unfold. I know she did. Because one night, as I sat in my apartment, finalizing a new round of seed funding, my phone rang. Her name lit up the screen. For a long time, I just stared at it. Part of me wondered if I should ignore it. Let it ring until she realized I truly didn't care anymore. But I picked up. I didn't say anything. For a moment, neither did she. I could hear her breathing, slow, shaky, like she was forcing herself to hold it together. Then, in a voice I barely recognized, she spoke. Nathan, I need help. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. She didn't try to manipulate. Because she had nothing left to manipulate with. She had lost the company. Her name. Her image. Her legacy. And now, she was asking for help from the man she discarded like yesterday's news. I didn't gloat. I didn't shout. I didn't even smile. I just said it, one last time. Sorry, Rachel. Only family is allowed. And I hung up. That was the moment it truly ended. The man who once stayed up all night debugging her dreams was gone. The partner who once believed in forever was buried under the weight of her betrayal. And what remained was something colder. Sharper. Unforgiving. Not out of spite. Out of survival. She made her choice. And I made mine. Corpals was dead. But SyncForge? It was thriving. I didn't just get my revenge. I got my life back. And she got exactly what she gave me. Silence. Looking back, it's strange how quiet revenge feels when it's done right. But beneath the silence, there are truths I carry with me. Lessons carved into me like scars I'll never forget. The first? Never sign away your worth. In love, in business, in life, protect what you've built. No one values what you hand over too easily, not even those closest to you. Second, trust must be earned daily. Rachel didn't betray me overnight. It was slow, methodical, dressed as progress. But I ignored the signs because I loved her. That was my mistake. Third, and maybe most important, you're never too old to take back what's yours. No matter how far someone pushes you down, No matter how long they try to silence your voice, you know your truth. And if you've got the strength to stand again, do it with everything you've got. To anyone out there, especially those who feel forgotten, sidelined, used, remember this. Age doesn't dim your value. Experience doesn't make you obsolete. It makes you dangerous, especially when you've got nothing left to lose but everything to reclaim.